want to thank you so much, Rebecca, for that amazing performance. I am it made me want to cry, honestly, but I didn't, thank goodness. So, welcome everybody back from lunch. I hope you had a really good time listening and being able to eat Delta's good food. I forgot to thank them earlier, by the way, for the food. It was really good. I love their creamy soup. As Marcia said, our next presentation is by a group of youth from the Deaf Crows Collective. The Deaf Crows Collective is a group of deaf students from Tom Collegiate in Regina. The mission of the collective is to provide opportunities for theater performance by deaf, hard of hearing, and hearing, late deafened actors of all ages to celebrate deaf culture and encourage self-expression. Please welcome, I apologize if I pronounce this incorrectly, Mustafa, Shayla, Fatima, and Ilhan to present to us on how the deprivation of language can impact youth mental health and how involvement with the collective has helped them heal. We also want to thank to our interpreters from Saskatchewan Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services who have been helping us throughout the conference.
Hello, good afternoon. How are you all? So our presentation is about deaf youth mental health, and it's made in part from us from the Deaf Crows Collective. So the Deaf Crows Collective was set up in 2016 in Regina. So it's a safe way for us to share our deaf experiences, and our goal is to educate the public about all of the challenges we face. So it's supported by funded by the Saskatchewan Arts Board and Canada Council for the Arts, and supported by Regina Public School Board. Sorry, I messed up, I need to go back. So our goal is about teaching about deaf culture and teaching deaf issues and forming allies and partnerships. So again, we are funded through the Saskatchewan Arts Board, Artist in Schools Program, and the Canada Council for the Arts. And it's supported through Regina Public School Division. So now we'll introduce ourselves. The presenters, myself, my name is Shayla. I'm 21 years old. So a little bit about my story. I grew up in a First Nation school, and I really didn't know a lot. I was the only deaf person in the school with all hearing. And I moved to Regina at the age of 15, and I started learning how to sign then at the age of 15. Hello, my name is Mustafa, and I'm from Syria. Now I moved to Canada 3 years ago. In Syria, I went to a deaf school. There wasn't a lot of focus on study and things like that there though, but then I moved here to Canada, and I'm learning English, and I'm a part of the deaf program, so thank you. Hi, my name is Fatima Nafisa, and this is my sign name. And it's really nice to see you all coming here. I'm from Bangladesh, and I'm 17 years old. I moved to Canada in about 2012, and I grew up fully in a mainstream classroom. I was not exposed to sign language. I thought very much like a hearing mind. And then about 4 years ago, I was enrolled in the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program, and I started to realize that who I really am is a deaf oral person who also uses sign language. name's Ilhan Abdi, and I moved in 2017 from Somalia. Prior to arriving here, I've never had experience in school. This year I graduate, and of course there'll be no educational opportunities for me. There's nothing left outside of Deaf Crows, so I don't know what will happen to me when I graduate. So there are 3 different things that impact deaf youth. One of them is linguistic prejudice, there's linguistic overprotection, and language deprivation. So linguistic prejudice means that hearing people, our friends, our family, relatives and doctors, they force us deaf and hard of hearing youth and children, they force us to use our voice and to listen. Come on, you can try to hear me, practice speech. Don't worry about sign language, put that away. It's awful to sign. You just need to be worrying about using your voice and communicating with the voice like hearing people do. So Shayla's gonna give us a little bit of a story about that. So I grew up and I didn't really sign. I was all oral. They taught me everything oral, but I really struggled because I didn't understand. And I wanted to do something fun and socialize and think with my friends, but what ended up happening is I had a deaf mentor, and her name was Lisa. And Lisa really helped me to find a deaf program. So I thought about this deaf program, and my family made the decision to move to Regina. And I went and I met all these different deaf people and thought, wow, I'm just like them. I felt so inspired that I could be a part of that group. So in about 6 months, I picked up this language of American Sign Language, and I really enjoy that. So I've been in school close to 6 years now in the deaf program. Thank you for your story. So we talked about linguistic overprotection. What this means is that children really don't know what to do. They're feeling kind of depressed because the parents and hearing people in general, they give explanations that are very short. They don't give a deep explanation. Very, very simple sentences. And parents and doctors and counselors, psychologists, teachers, they just don't know how to deal with a deaf and hard of hearing student or child. And so Mustafa will add to this here. So I really, really love my family. I want to make that clear. So my mom and I recently, we went to see a doctor, and there was no interpreter for me. We called and there was nothing available, so that was fine. So Mom and I went to see this doctor, and I really trust my mom. So the 2 of us went to talk to this doctor, but the doctor was talking to my mom. I don't understand anything that's happening because I'm deaf. So I interrupted my mom and I said, Mom, what's happening? And she says, oh, your nose is broken. Oh, okay. She said, now just wait again. So she went back and forth having this conversation with the doctor for about 10 minutes. And they finished that conversation, and I said, okay, what was the conversation? And she said, oh, we're getting you ready for surgery. And that was it. I had to accept that and sign requisition for a surgery. But I didn't understand anything about it. Nobody told me about it. No one gave me any deep explanation. That's a good story, Mustafa. Thank you. Now, language deprivation, what does this mean? It means it messes up things for us for school. It messes up our emotions, messes up our social skills. Mental health gets really messed up because our language is messed up. And we really struggle. We struggle with so many things in the world as a deaf and hard of hearing person. Ilhan has a story about that. So my family's very nice, they're very good. But my family, they don't know how to sign. They only talk and they give me these short words and explanations, but I don't understand them. So when I go home, I'm often on my own. So we talked about academic low feelings. So what this means, most of you guys as hearing folks, you have to look at this from a deaf perspective. Deaf kids often will fake reading because they don't understand the language and they struggle. We like to look at picture books and we look at the picture, but we ignore the sentences. And we get fascinated with those picture pieces. And we really struggle with feeling about who we are. So for example, everyone in our class is using these thick books and we give up because we can only read simple books. So social skills are also an example. So if you look at a deaf youth and a hearing youth, and you look at them side by side, you'll notice that often there's some differences. Teachers maybe don't know how to deal with a deaf youth. It's hard to deal with the deaf youth because, so for example, you can't teach them the hearing youth. You can kind of talk, you feel very comfortable, but with the deaf youth, like, how do you communicate? How do I give them that piece of information? So you kind of let them go off to play on their own and have fun or whatever, and we just can't accept that because deaf and hard of hearing youth, you know, they're the same as hearing youth. We're humans, we have the same human rights. Deaf and hard of hearing, you'll kind of notice some children are sometimes very rude and they don't have manners and they're not very mature. And so, for example, they might ask you a rude question. They might ask you a very personal question. Oh, do you have a boyfriend? And they want to know that story or whatever. And it's just not a question you're comfortable in answering. So what's happening is because deaf and hard of hearing children, their parents are not giving them enough teaching and enough exposure to language because the parents are thinking that it's not important for them to sign and they just want their kids to have fun and enjoy themselves. And a lot of our deaf youth are in deaf bubbles and they become deaf brats. And so what this deaf bubble means is it's all about me, it's all about me. I'm the winner. You guys, you are the one making the mistakes. I'm doing everything right, and I have all these rights, and it's you that's making these mistakes. And we tend to blame other people. And but we have a right to be taught as a deaf and hard of hearing youth. We need to understand what's right and wrong. We need you to tell us that. So we talk about emotional development. Many deaf children, they struggle. So we found a study that looked at 16.9% of deaf youth, when you compare them with hearing youth of 3.5%, identified having mental health issues. So deaf people typically have higher mental health issues. So there was a study done in Australia. There was a researcher that tried to figure out and analyze the depression. So they used a survey, and they asked, it was a depression survey, and they asked many deaf youth. There was 89 of them in this study that were deaf and hard of hearing across Australia. And what they found was that the deaf and hard of hearing youth had a much higher percentage of mental health disorders when you compared them with their hearing counterparts. Deaf were much worse than the hearing. So as a deaf person, when we need mental health services, we have to depend on an interpreter. So, you know, we would prefer to be able to talk directly to a doctor, not have to go through an interpreter. So Mustafa will explain this. So I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm telling you that story in ASL, and you and I feel connected. But if I go through an interpreter, I have to depend on the interpreter to make sure he doesn't misunderstand what I'm saying, and then tell the doctor and take that doctor's English and put it back into ASL for me. And I've experienced where they've gone way off the point. So I would prefer to be able to directly deal with my doctor, not to have to go through a second party. And I want to add to that it's really frustrating. So I want to thank our interpreters for helping us. You know, they accept these interpreting jobs, and interpreters are great for things like for presentations and music and things like that, something important in the audience. But when I want to have a direct conversation about my mental health, I don't want an interpreter. This is my personal problem, my private issue. I don't don't want to have an interpreter to know my business, to know my problems. And I don't know how to do that. So it would be better if I could directly deal with my doctor or my therapist. That's for me personally. We have a deaf classroom in Regina. There are 19 students. I'm sorry, I'm gonna back up. So in Regina there we have deaf and hard of hearing students in our school. And we have 19 students. Now, students who use sign language for communication, there are 13 students. We have 3 students that are considered to be deaf oral, and we have 3 hard of hearing students. So how many families do you think use sign language at home? There's 18 families that do not use sign language. We have 1 student who has 1 family that uses American Sign Language to communicate with them at home. So in our classroom, we did a survey. We surveyed 13 of our students, and we asked them various questions. We found that 92% of our students reported feeling depression and low mood. 73% of those students, they felt worthless, hopeless. They didn't feel they had a future for themselves. And they didn't feel like they were a good person. Now, using a scale where we asked students how they felt with depression, 50% of them had thoughts or plans or actions of suicide or self-harm. Now, some felt that often every day, some actually had plans of suicide, and others had thought about it in the past. So we're all deaf, and so we're thinking, how can we prevent mental health issues amongst the deaf? The first thing we want is that we want sign language. It needs to be recognized that that is the deaf and hard of hearing's language. Don't take our language from us. Part of our life and part of our language is signing. We need training for our interpreters. They need to be psychologists and counselors and doctors. They need to be able to communicate using sign. And that would solve a lot of the deaf and communication issues of trying to depend on an interpreter. We need to have more people who are fluent. You know, you'd be surprised to know in my high school we have 1 interpreter in my school. That's it. And in Regina, we have 1 interpreter for the entire deaf community right now. That's not enough. We need qualified and trained, certified interpreters. So for example, I'm booking an appointment for an interpreter and someone says, oh yeah, I know how to sign, sure, and they get hired to come to these appointments, but really they don't know how to sign or deal with anything. And that's very frustrating. How do we deal with that? How do people understand it? So we have a lot of people with fake certifications and fake training who can't really sign. And we're saying, well, what are you learning sign for? You need to learn sign to support deaf and hard of hearing people, please. And again, the problem is we don't have enough interpreters. We really don't have any interpreters. Sorry, I have to just look at my paper. And we want, you know, people in the world and the public to have access to signing. So for example, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go back here. Oh, it's awful, I'm really nervous up here. What we really want is for the public to see signing for deaf and hard of hearing. For example, if we went to a restaurant or a doctor or shopping, we had an appointment, we need somebody to know how to sign with us. So our program has an arts program, and it's really good. It really helps us. It's amazing, really. And so you think, like, when I'm depressed, before when I was depressed, I didn't know what to do. And I was the only student. And now we're a group of students. And when we come together at the beginning, we don't know how to communicate with each other, and we don't know how to deal with our issues, and we're just facing failure all the time. So what happened is we hired an artist, and she came in and was dealing with us directly, and she was teaching us how to express ourselves. And we were expressing ourselves through different interviews, different art projects, and we got to do it all individually. It wasn't like one big group. We each got individual sessions, and we didn't need an interpreter because we could do it directly with our teachers and the artists. And we developed this feeling of being happiness, with this feeling that, you know, we can do this, and the students need this development opportunity. So does anybody want to add anything else to that? I'm just going to add something to this, that the art has really helped the deaf and hard of hearing students to really, because often what happens is deaf and hard of hearing people hold on to their secrets. They hold on to their feelings. It's my personal business. I don't want to share it. But we're saying, you know, all of us are facing the same threats. And we want the ability to express that. And so in this program, we're very comfortable expressing ourselves because our artist, Christine, she's really good at showing that she values our communication, she deals with us directly, and it's very perfect. It allows us to express ourselves through the art, and the art helps us to develop that understanding. So I have one friend in my classroom, and she hasn't had enough supports for her mental health. And she's not having enough exposure, and she's 21. And he grew up with nothing, no signing, and now we're trying to practice that, you know, but there's not enough exposure because we've got some mental health problems because of that. And there's just not enough development or connection. Like this student in our program who's 21 just coming to us, he can't even connect what colors and things mean. So that's why the art program is very helpful. It's been teaching him those types of things as well.
Their PowerPoint is missing. If you could put it back, thanks.
Is that me? Oh, okay. So Deaf Girls Collective was set up separate from the literacy program. We started about 4 years ago. And it's all about being a team. And so let me explain about this. It's really good because we support each other and we work with each other and we figure out each other. We figure out how to help each other. And it's not like, oh, you're wrong, your story is wrong. No, we actually show mutual respect to each other and we respect each other's experiences. And we try to develop ways to express ourselves, and then we kind of realize that we all have the same experiences, and some of us have different stories. And it's a safe place for us to express ourselves because there's a lot of trust there. And the trust starts out slowly, but we get to express ourselves. And so we sign, and we use ASL poetry, and we share different writings and different thoughts and different experiences, and then we express that. And it's a lot of work, but we want to show the world something. So Deaf Girls Collective has had several projects. We've done something called the Deaf Forest. We had a Deaf Girls Play, Apple Time, and the Deaf Cabinet. Deaf Crows, the play, that started us with the drama. Before that, we were talking about the art program. And so that was 4 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago now, we started the art program. And we're going through that and learning to express ourselves and our experiences. And we realized that we needed to show the audience that they need to know about the deaf and hard of hearing experiences and our feelings. And we wanted to show them that. And we wanted to show it with confidence. So we decided we wanted to challenge the audience. And so to add to that, a lot of those stories were very negative because we were bullied and we were oppressed. And we had a lot of bad things happen. There was so much bullying. It was awful. Really, it's really awful and negative. The deaf forest had 3 forests within it. There was a deaf, a hard of hearing, and a hearing forest. And so Fatima will just give me more of examples of that. Sure. So there's a deaf world, and we have a hard of hearing world and a hearing world. And everyone has a different path. And we wanted you, or the audience, to try and figure out these worlds and how it felt. So, for example, Mustafa and Ilhan, they are profoundly deaf. Shayla and I, we are considered to be hard of hearing. And all of you guys are hearing, right? And so you guys know what it's like to be hearing. You know your world, you think your world is perfect and beautiful. And it doesn't mean like you think it's all wonderful and you've had these wonderful, perfect experiences. I know we have all issues with mental health and things like that. And that's your own personal thing, and I'm going to respect that. But have any of you tried to be in a deaf and hard of hearing world and understand? Probably not. And so that's why we decided to make the deaf forest. We had this idea of the deaf forest, and that was to show that you would actually go through these different worlds. It was kind of a metaphor. A metaphor, we're saying like, try things in the deaf shoes. So, you know, the deaf and hard of hearing, you had to try things from the deaf and hard of hearing perspective. And that's why we decided to show our feelings through the art. And as you entered the different forests, they were dark and light, and there was lots of brightness, and some of the sounds were off and awful, and there was loud noises, and there was quiet things, and that showed that. And so that's the Deaf Crows making the Deaf Forest here. We did all the painting, lots and lots of painting. And then apple time. That's recently, we did that last year. And I remember we had our art program. I remember our art program was, and then we went separate to the Deaf Crows, and the Deaf Crows is separate, okay? So we did apple time. We were thinking like, okay, so last year we're thinking of apple time. And we made a decision that we wanted to show stories about what we enjoy, the fun things we do, the fascinating, curious things, that we wanted to show that. And we're thinking, how do we do that? People are curious about us all the time. And we don't want them to be scared of us. And we don't want them to think we're stupid and that we're fake and that we just use technology. Because that's not really, I really hate technology. I don't know how to use technology. But it was really interesting because when you learn technology, we use things like photographs and laptops and like that. That's enjoyable. So we put that aside and we looked at apple time. And that was what we enjoyed. We wanted to show the audience that the deaf can do everything you can. It doesn't mean that we're awful. Really, it was a lot of fun, right? Shayla, do you want to add something to that? I'll just add to that apple time stories were much more positive. Because many deaf, I'm thinking we had about 9 students, we had different stories, and they're all from different cultures. So we were respectful of each other and our cultures. It wasn't saying like, oh, we hate each other. We showed that we were all equal. And I want to add to that. I forgot. Anyway, thank you for your support. Okay. Thank you, God, for giving that back to me. Okay, so we had some feedback. And we got some feedback from a lot of the audience about apple time. And they started to realize that they said this was very different from the Deaf Crows play. Now, Apple Time feedback was the Deaf Crows play a lot was about, I'm so sorry, I feel so sorry for you, I feel pity, I feel so responsible for you, and how can I help you? And they're saying, like, we want to worry for you. And he's saying, you said Apple Time, but you meant Deaf Crows. Right, yes, Deaf Crows. That was Deaf Crows, yes, right. It was all about pity. People really pitied us and felt very negatively. And then Apple Time, it was very different feedback. They realized that, oh, deaf people can do anything. And we don't need. And they're saying, we don't need your support. And we're saying, well, no, we still need your support. But we're not a burden. We're not your responsibility. We just need some help. And we need some support for what we need. And teach us. Oh, just go back for 1 second. Now, Apple Time finished, and then we were really, really thankful because someone from the Globe Theatre in Regina, they saw that and they invited us to go there. That was the first time that a deaf theatre group's been at a professional theatre in Regina. And so they hired us, and we're really thankful for that opportunity. And then we finished there, and we actually took it off to the Sound Off Festival in Edmonton. And really, this was a tough time because we had school, we had to do our school studies, we had to practice performing, and we had to make all of our props and things. So this is us making all of that. It took us a long time. We were going back and forth between school and practices and making props, but it was a really tough time, but it was good. And how long did it take, Mustafa? Right. It took us 6 months. So we'll just let you kind of read this for yourself. We'll give you a couple seconds to read this. So I'm being suggested to read it for you if you can't see. Deaf Crow, this was feedback from audience. Deaf Crows provides a powerful voice to the hard of hearing and their struggles to acquire language in a hearing world. Their struggles in school and struggles with their identity as someone who is lacking in the primary sense. The stories in this play are authentic because these stories were the stories of the students. The play was not only informative, making the audience aware of the experiences of the deaf, but it was a wake-up call to our education system. As an institution that is supposed to be welcoming to all children, it demonstrates how the education system has been insensitive to this group of students. And this is feedback from Apple Time. I love the way individually and together each performer gave to the performance, to each other and to the audience, absolutely 100% of his or her genuine self. Of all the movies, TV, or live theater shows I've ever seen, I'm 79, so quite a few, always acting showed through. You are so sincere, so real, so deep and generous. Apple Time issued your message, every person different, every person equal, with knowledge and power that will permeate the spirit of all of us who experienced it in each and every setting for the rest of our lives. I cannot thank you enough, but thank you very much. So changes that we created. The Saskatchewan Arts Board supports us. They support through our program at Winston Knoll Collegiate. And Canada Council of the Arts supported our travel to Edmonton, to the Sound Off Festival. And the arts community has rallied around Deaf Crows Collective, and they've given many opportunities. ASL interpreters are being hired for performances at the Globe Theatre. Saskatchewan Cultural Exchange has organized a ASL music interpretation workshop, and that'll be happening in the summertime, in July. And they're hiring an interpreter named Amber Galloway. She's a very strong, skilled musical interpreter. A lot of deaf people are very fascinated by her, and so we'll be able to access that. And then in Regina, the ASL classes, before They were very small, very low enrollment, but now we're seeing record highs. More and more people are signing up to be a part of these classes. Now, if someone in the back could hit that video.
Is there someone back there? It's, who's got the laptop? I can maybe go fix it. Do you want to go to the second Okay, it's okay. There you go.
So we want to welcome you to Apple Time and thank you for coming. So we would just really like to say thank you for coming and listening to our presentation and taking some of your time today. Hope you have a good day. Do you have any questions for us?
So right now we'll open the floor up for just a few questions. And if everyone who wants